Hey guys, thanks for joining me for another Yu-Gi-Oh video, and today we are going to talk about the Mikanko deck. So, I know I haven't done a ton of Yu-Gi-Oh on my channel, and the reason is because I really like to play a deck a lot and really understand it. I don't just want to like build a deck off of reading it and then try to make a deck list and present that to you guys. And Mikanko isn't on Master Duel right now, right? So I only get an opportunity once a week to play at my locals. So I've been playing it for several weeks. I've been doing very well with it. This past week, I just went undefeated with it at my locals, so I feel like this is a pretty good build I can show off. I've actually gone undefeated with this twice at locals, which is really, really good, right? Obviously, I've kind of updated and changed the deck as I've gone through, and this is with the Duelist Nexus support, right? So this is a August 2023 deck list, and I'm going to talk about, like, how to play the deck and how the cards work in case you're not familiar with it. And this is what I would call a fairly pure Mikanko deck. I've seen like Libromancer builds. I don't really like those builds because it feels like more of a Libromancer deck than an actual Mikanko deck. But there are other things in packages. And just so you know, there are a couple of packages that I used to run that I don't run anymore that a lot of people run that I'm going to show you. I'm going to explain how those packages work and maybe why I don't run them anymore, but it doesn't mean they're bad. They're still very good. It's kind of like a personal preference, right? So let's go ahead and hop right into it. So if you're completely unfamiliar with Mikankos, the way the deck works is it has a bunch of monsters that have 0 attack, 0 defense, and they have effects that make it so that when you attack or like battle another monster, your opponent takes the damage instead of you, and they can't be destroyed by battle. So if you're familiar with Gustos, it's pretty much like what Die Gustos Freeze does for Gustos. These units just kind of have inherently, okay? The ritual monsters will have it just always, and then the little monsters get it when they're equipped with stuff. So we'll kind of talk about that as we go through. So we're going to start with the monster lineup. We're going to start with pretty much the universal 3 of. This is probably like the most expensive base card in the deck. This is Ohime. Ohime is ridiculously good because as a ritual monster, she has a really good hand effect, and her hand effect is just you reveal her, search your deck for any Mikanko card, add it to your hand, and then you discard a card from your hand to the graveyard. And what's nice about Mikanko is there are several cards that work very well in the graveyard, so the discarding isn't necessarily a negative, especially depending on what you have in your hand. The other thing this card does is when she's actually on the field as a monster, she can quick effect select an equip card in your graveyard and equip it to any appropriate target on the field. So depending on what the game state is and what you have available in your graveyard, she can do a lot of really busted things as a quick effect. So she's a very, very nice monster. And then the way that she works is she can't be destroyed by battle, and any damage involving her will go to your opponent instead, and she's a 0/0 attack monster, right? And she just gets that whether she's equipped with something or not. She just always has that, right? Then the next ritual we're playing is Arahime. Now, this is the new one from Duelist Nexus. I think this one pretty much is either a 1 or actually a 0 index. I'm trying her at 1, and I kind of like her so far, but she is kind of a bricky card. She's not a card... It's not something you like always want to draw into. Arahime actually works very good from the graveyard, okay? So she has the same effect like when she's on field, can't be destroyed by battle, and your opponent takes the damage when she battles. But her more unique effect is that when she's in your hand or your graveyard and you have another Mikanko card in your graveyard, you can equip her to a card on the field. And then what you can do is during the end phase, you can bounce the card she's equipped to and herself back to the hand. So she's pretty much like, you want to think of her as just like an equip card that you can recycle and keep re-equipping the things. So you can use her as a way to always have an equip card for your normal Mikanko monsters, because what you're going to find is you always want those little Mikankos to have access to an equip card. Without an equip card, they're pretty much dead ducks, right? You need equips on them. But you can also use her to equip to an opponent's monster, and then during the end phase, you could bounce it. So she can be slight field removal. I think the reason why people aren't as excited about her is because her removal is a little bit slow because you got to wait for the end phase. And other than like equipping to a card, she doesn't like add any effects. Like she just is an equipped body there. And then your Mikankos get good things from being equipped, but she doesn't inherently do anything as an equipped card, right? So that's why she's just a 1 of. I may go down to 0 eventually, but for now I'm going to keep her at 1 and just keep playing her. She did okay this week, so I was fine with it. Then for the little monsters, so there's 3 different 3-star monsters, all of different elements, right? So the wind one is called Huli, and this is universally like regarded as the best one by far. She, I would say, is a 3 of in most builds. I have seen some builds with 2, but these are because they are kind of mixing heavily with other archetypes, and they don't have as much room for Mikanko stuff. But in a pure Mikanko build, I feel like you got to run her at 3. So all of the 3-star monsters will have a couple of things in common, so let me cover that first. So the first thing is all of these monsters cannot, you don't take any damage involving a battle with them. So if you just have this monster on the field, no equip or anything, if your opponent attacks it, it will get destroyed by battle, but you won't take any damage. Now, all of the Mikankos have another effect that if they're equipped with anything, then they can't be destroyed by battle, and your opponent takes the damage involving them, and they're all 0 attack, 0 defense, right? So any of these little Mikankos, you just want them equipped with anything, and they will crash into your opponent's monsters and do a lot of damage. Now, Hu Li in particular has a couple of effects that make her really busted. The first one is when she becomes equipped with a card, once per turn you can search for a Mikanko trap card from deck and add it to your hand. There's some very good ones in here. We'll talk about those a little bit later. But the really busted thing about her is while she is on the field and you control an equip card, Mikanko cards cannot be targeted. And this is what saves the deck. I think without Hu Li, the deck wouldn't be nearly as good. Hu Li actually saves the deck because not being able to target will shut down a ton of decks. It will just shut down. Like, I get Hu Li out, and I can just sit in a grind state until I get what I need to, like, OTK or get a big monster on board and kill it. But Hu Li, opponents will find that they really struggle getting around her. Because the other thing that we'll talk about later with the equip spells, all of the Mikanko equip spells say that the monster that it is equipped to cannot be destroyed by card effects. So what happens is if Hu Li is out and I have an equip card, my Mikanko cards can't be targeted, including the equip cards, so they can't even target to destroy my equip cards, right? So they can't be targeted, and then any Mikanko that's equipped with something can also not be destroyed by card effects. So you can't just like Dark Hole them or Raigeki them or Lightning Storm them, right? Like, so they're hard to get rid of that way, which is really, really nice, right? Now, there are ways to get around Mikankos, obviously, but if your opponent isn't ready for it, like Hu Li can just shut them down and you can pretty much coast to victory. So she's a really important part of the deck. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to do 3 Ha-Rei, which is the fire one. A lot of people will run her at 2, sometimes even 1, depending on the build. Because I'm doing pure Mikanko, I really like her at 3. And I am doing, and in my build, like, she just works really well for my build. But I like Ha-Rei at 3 because she is also a searcher, right? So she'll have the base things that they all have. So I don't take damage involving her. And then if she's equipped, she will deflect the damage and she can't be destroyed by battle. And then her unique effect is that when she becomes equipped, I can search for a Mikanko equip card and add it to hand. So she's a searcher, which is really nice because these Mikanko equips are very powerful. So I want the ability to search and make my deck more consistent. And then the last of the 3-star monsters is Nini. Nini is definitely a 1 of or even a 0 of. I think she's worth it at 1 just to be like, she's pretty much just like a different named Mikanko. She does get the same stuff, right? Like when she's equipped, she can crash in and deal damage. She can't be destroyed by battle. But her unique effect isn't nearly as good as I would say the other two. Because the other two, they're searching cards, which is really important. And Hu Li's giving you the non-targeting, which is ridiculous, right? Nini doesn't really do any of that. Nini's effect is that when she's equipped with something, during your opponent's turn, you can actually quick effect take control of one of their monsters until the end phase. And I believe the monster's effects are negated while you control it. So really, the way you want to think of Nini is she's just like a disruption card, right? Nini, like in this deck, you're going to find you want to go second. But in a situation where your opponent makes you go first, Nini is actually a solid turn 1 card, because if you get her out with an equip and your opponent starts to combo off, what it is you can steal one of their pieces of their combo so that it'll like interrupt them, right? Now you have to be very knowledgeable about what your opponent is doing and when is the best time to do that. But an example would be as like, let's say they bring out Diviner of Herald and they pitch something to make it a 6-star because they're going to try to go into a Baron. Well, you could steal the Herald out from under them. They don't have the tuner anymore. They can't finish the combo. So stuff like that is where you would use Nini, right? But she's definitely like more of a situational card, so you don't want to overdo it on her. I think 1 is probably the right number on her. Then I'm going to run 3 Lava Golems, and this is going to finish it out for my monsters. Now, in a Mikanko deck, you know, they're basically, they have the Gusto philosophy, right? Like, if you're familiar with Gusto, Sprees makes it so your Gustos crash in and your opponent takes all the damage. This deck does it on a much better level, but you need your opponent to have like big beefy monsters, and so once your opponent understands what you're trying to do, they're not going to allow you to do that. So it's really important that you have either Kaijus or Lava Golem in your deck, or a combination of both. I've seen builds with both, right? Now I'm going to talk about the Kaiju build at the end, because I do have a package I used to run, but I actually am leaning more towards the Lava Golem set right now. I'm liking this a little bit better for the current meta at my locals. People are constantly spitting out boards with 2 to 3 like ridiculous negate monsters. You know, like they'll have Appaloosa, they'll have Baron, they'll have Dark Dragoon. They'll just like toss out all this crap that I don't want to deal with. Lava Golem's nice because I can get rid of 2 of those pieces, and then they either won't have a third negate, or I can work around the third negate. And then Lava Golem is like a really huge body that I can beat into. Not to mention that Lava Golem can help me OTK faster, because if I can deal, maybe I can't deal 8,000 damage, but I can deal 7,000 in a turn, then they're going to hit their standby. Lava Golem's going to take them out. The negative of Lava Golem is you can't normal summon when you bring them out, but I did my build specifically to work around that condition. I have another card in my deck that also makes it so I can't normal, so I have a lot of ways to be able to special summon Mikankos if I need to, right? So that's kind of the base monster board setup there. So with that, we are going to go into the spells and traps. So let's go to spells first, and we're going to start off with the Mikanko equips, right? So I'm going to start off, we want 3 Water Arabesque. This, I'd say, universally, a lot of people agree of is a 3 of. I think when the deck first came out and people didn't like fully understand it or hadn't like play tested it, there were people running this at like 2, but it's like, no, dude, you gotta run this at 3. It is way too good. So this has the common effect that all, like most of the Mikanko equips have, that the equipped monster cannot be destroyed by card effects, which is really good. Now, some of the Mikanko equips either require a Mikanko on the field or can only be equipped to Mikankos, but Water Arabesque doesn't have any of that. This can just be equipped to anything, right? So what's really nice is when this card is equipped to a monster, you can activate its effect to special summon a Mikanko from your deck that has a different name than the equipped monster, and then you bounce the monster. So there are 2 effective ways you can use it. So let me just give you an example here. So let's say I open, and I have like Ha-Ray and Arabesque in hand, right? So what I could do is I could normal summon Ha-Ray, equip it with Arabesque. When Ha-Ray gets equipped, she gets to search for any equipped card, so I can just go into my deck, search for whatever I want, right? Then what I can do is I can activate Water Arabesque to summon Hu-Li from the deck. You want to get into Hu-Li as quickly as possible, so because Hu-Li is going to stop your opponent from targeting. So your goal should be get into Hu-Li whatever way you can, turn 1 if possible. So what happens is Water Arabesque then summons Hu-Li, it bounces Ha-Ray back to hand, and then Water Arabesque becomes equipped to Hu-Li, and now Hu-Li can search a trap. So all I did was I started with Ha-Ray and Water Arabesque, and when I end, I've now got Hu-Li with non-targeting, and I've plussed 2 cards. I've gotten a trap card and an equipped spell card just from equipping these to those 2 monsters, right? So that's like the more like offensive way to do it, or the way like on my side, that's the way to use Arabesque. Now on the opponent's side, you can equip this to your opponent's monsters too, right? So what's really nice is let's say they have like a Baron out, and I baited out their negate, so their Baron doesn't have a negate anymore. You can equip this to their Baron, then activate the effect. I can summon Hu-Li from my deck, bounce their Baron, this gets equipped, and I search for a trap. So not only am I removing the opponent's like really oppressive monster, I'm getting a monster on board, and I'm plussing a trap off of it at the same time. So really, really nasty what you can do there. And then another thing you can do that's really cool is if you're running Kaijus or Lava Golem, which you should be running one or the other in a Mikanko deck for sure. But if like you're in a situation where maybe my opponent has another big monster to beat into, or for some reason I'm in a situation where I'm not like really needing to attack, you can lay Lava Golem over their 2 monsters or a Kaiju. You can do Water Arabesque on that monster, bring out like my Hu-Li, and then I can bounce this, and even though it's on my opponent's side, it comes back to my hand, and I can reuse it again. So being able to reuse Lava Golem and Kaijus with Water Arabesque is kind of nasty too, right? So too good of a card not to have. Now I'm running 3 Fire Dance. Now a lot of builds will have this at 2 or 1. The reason why I run this at 3 is this allows me to special summon, so it's helping me work around Lava Golem, and it's helping me work around another card we're going to see in a little bit here. But what Fire Dance does is it's an equip card that you can play, and you special summon a Mikanko from your hand or graveyard, and then you can summon a monster to your opponent's field from their graveyard and negate the effects. Now, that second part is optional. So if your opponent doesn't have any monsters in graveyard, you can still play this just to special summon your own, right? So an example of a play would be, like the one thing too is like once opponents understand what you're doing, they will be very hesitant to even summon stuff. But a very common thing your opponent will do is they will ash you, right? So let's say I play a search card, they ash me turn 1, and let's say I still have access to Fire Dance and like something in my graveyard or hand, right? So let's say they ashed me, I can play Fire Dance, bring out Huli, Huli's going to search for a trap, and then Fire Dance can summon the Ash to their field. And so now Ash is on their field, and it's got 1800 defense, so it's still something that I can beat into or hit. Or if I'm running a Kaiju, I could lay a Kaiju on top of their Ash and have a bigger body to hit, right? So Fire Dance is good not just to summon your own monsters, but you can force stuff out of your opponent's graveyard and force them to get monsters, because the deck really understands itself, right? That like your opponent, if they're smart, they're not going to put big bodies out there for you, so Fire Dance can kind of force the issue. I really like that. Then the next one I'm running is Mayawashi Dori. This is another one that not everyone will run at 3, but I'm running pure Mikanko. I like Mayawashi Dori. I think it's a very good card. So this one also, the equipped monster will not be able to be destroyed by card effects, right? This one too can be kind of equipped to anybody that you want to, but you're typically going to equip it to your own monsters. And what this card does is, so when it's equipped to a monster and you battle, at the end of the damage step, you can bounce a card. So this is really nice because your opponent could have like some oppressive card on the field. They could have a floodgate that's really bugging you. You can just go ahead and bounce that thing back to their hand, and you're free to kind of operate the rest of your turn then without that floodgate on field. They might have like some type of monster that's really messing with you that maybe you can't destroy it. Because Mayawashi Dori is important because this deck, you're never beating over things and attacking it, right? So if there is a monster out there that's messing with you that you don't want out there, you have the ability to bounce it, right? So really Lava Golem or Kaijus or like bouncing, that's the way you get rid of opponent's monsters, but everything else is like 0 attack, so you can't really attack over anything, even low attacking things, so you need ways to get rid of those. The other thing Mayawashi does that is really good is its graveyard effect. So this is a target for Ohime to discard a lot, but in graveyard you can just target a Mikanko card in your graveyard, special summon it and equip this card to it. So if Huli's in your graveyard, so like if both of these are in my grave, right, like Huli and Mayawashi Dori are over here in my grave, activate this from grave, summon Huli, gets equipped, search for a trap, and my opponents can't target at that point, right? Now the one thing about Mayawashi Dori is if you summon the monster that way, the monster is banished when it leaves the field. So if that Huli leaves, it's going to be banished, but there's a card, a trap card that actually helps you with that, which is really nice. Next, we're going to have Reflection Rondo, and this is going to be the last Mikanko equip, and this is just going to be a one-of, very much like the water version, like her counterpart, right? Like the water version that is represented on here, that's Nini on the card. Just like her, it is also a one-of. This is essentially like a Snatch Steal, so if you control Mikanko, you can just play this, equip it to an opponent's monster, and take control of it. However, the opponent's monster's effects are negated. So it's good that it removes the monster from your opponent's field, but you're not going to be able to like use their effects. So if I steal a Baron, I can't like pop a card with it or anything like that. But it's good just to like grab an opponent's monster, and then I could possibly link with it or Xyz with it or something like that. So I'm going to show you some ways with the extra deck that we can kind of play with Reflection Rondo, because I think the extra deck is really where this card comes into play. Then we're going to run a quick play spell called the Great Mikanko Ceremony. Now we're going to run this at 3. And the reason why is this is going to be the main way that we summon our rituals. We're actually not running the ritual spell at all. I am side decking it, and I'll explain why. But this is the main way we summon our rituals. So what this is a quick play that can special summon a Mikanko from your hand, ignoring its summoning conditions. So you could summon the level 3s or the rituals with this. But once again, I'm kind of doing a really heavy special summon build focus to work around Lava Golem and another spell card. So what this does is it'll special a Mikanko from your hand, ignoring the summoning conditions. So it's a way you can get out the rituals. But the really good thing is the graveyard effect. So the graveyard effect of this is that you can banish it from the graveyard to send a Mikanko card from your deck to the graveyard, right? And you can do both the same turn. So an example would be as let's say I have Ohime and Mikanko Ceremony in hand. Or if I don't have Ceremony in hand, I can use Ohime to search. So the way I'd start my turn is you always reveal Ohime, search for whatever you want, add it to your hand, discard something. Then either during my opponent's turn or my turn, because this is quick play, right? I can play this, bring out Ohime. Ohime is now on the field, and she doesn't, and what happens is the monster summoned with this bounces back to your hand at the end phase of your opponent's turn. So for my turn and the rest of my opponent's turn, she's going to be here, right? Ceremony then goes to graveyard, and then I can banish it, and then I can put something in the graveyard. So I could put my Awashidori in the graveyard and then use that to summon something that's in my graveyard. I could put Arahime in the graveyard, which is the other ritual I talked about. So we could put Arahime in the graveyard to use her to equip the things. If I already have my Awashidori in graveyard, I can use this to put Huli in my graveyard, so then I have a target to summon with it. So once again, it just helps you explore the deck and get access to whatever you want. So it's very good, which is really, really nice, right? And then you have Ohime, remember, she can quick effect equip stuff, even if she's summoned with this. So that's why that card's really nice. I really like it. Then we run 3 Preparation of Rites, and this is really just to search out Ohime. If you already have Ohime, then you search out Arahime, and then Ohime will search for something, you discard Arahime, then she's in the graveyard and can equip the stuff from graveyard. Now, I do want to talk about, in a minute, I'm going to talk about something else, but then I have Reinforcements of the Army. Now, this is a little bit more flexible. So the deck runs, what's kind of cool about the deck is the monsters all have different types and attributes. So Huli is Psychic Wind, and Ha-Rei is Fire Warrior. So Reinforcements is there really to get Ha-Rei as the Fire Warrior monster. Now, you can also play Emergency Teleport. I have opted to actually move away from Emergency Teleport and just have Reinforcements. The reason why, Teleport's nice because it can get Huli, but if you teleport Huli and don't have anything to equip her with, she doesn't really do anything. And then she's going to get banished at the end of the turn. And if you're not linking her off or like bouncing her back to hand, you're just going to bring her out to kind of stall. I find that I just wasn't liking the way that teleport was operating in the deck with Huli. Even though Huli's the best monster in the deck and you want to get her out, it isn't like an effective way. The reason why I like Reinforcement better, right, is I can Reinforcement and get into Ha-Rei. Then if I summon Ha-Rei and equip her with something, I can search for Arabesque. And Arabesque equipped to something can then turn into a Huli. So Reinforcement is kind of like a backwards way of getting into Huli in a more permanent way while stabilizing my hand with equip cards. Whereas I found Teleport, like I could be in a situation where maybe I don't have equip cards. I could teleport Huli out, but then I've got nothing I can really do with her. So I think Reinforcement I like actually a little bit more. So that's what I'm running there. Then we have a couple of just generic equips that are actually really, really good. So you will commonly see Double-Edged Sword played. This equip is basically a cheat code to OTK. What this does is the equipped monster gains 2,000 attack, and it makes it so both players take the battle damage. So the reason why this is busted is the way it interacts with Mikanko or Gusto is that my card says any battle damage I take, you take instead. So what would happen, let's say they have Lava Golem on the field. I equip Lava Golem with this. Lava Golem goes up to 5,000 attack. I attack with the Mikanko. Double-Edged Sword says we both take 5,000 damage, but my Mikanko says my opponent takes my part of that damage. So the opponent then takes 10,000 damage on a Double-Edged Sword. So it's really crazy. So basically, any monster equipped with Double-Edged Sword that has 4,000 attack after being equipped, you can OTK with it. So if they have any monster that bare minimum has 2,000 attack, you equip it, they gain 2,000, you swing in once, and you double knock for game. Like, it's crazy. So you definitely, I've seen builds where people run this at more than one copy, but I feel like that's too bricky. This is a card you do not want to always have in your hand. This is a card I would rather like kind of know that I've got the situation I want, and then search into it, and then play it from there. But I don't always want to be drawing this or top decking it. It can get really bad really quick with this card. So I think it's just a one-of. Then the other card I play as a one-of is Axe of Fools. I absolutely love this card in this deck. What it does two things that helps your deck out. One is you're going to equip it to an opponent's monster. They're going to gain 1,000 attack, which you want. You're going to make them stronger, but then it also negates their effects. So this is really good because I can equip an opponent's monster with this, negate whatever oppressive effect they might have, and then I'm free to kind of beat into it. What's really nice about it is I have a trap card I'm going to talk about in a minute that can equip any equip card from your deck to a monster on the field. So you can actually play a trap card, search this from the deck when your opponent tries to activate an effect, equip this to it, and essentially negate the effect. This is kind of like the imperm of the deck. So I really, really like Axe of Fools, but just a one of, not more than one. It's also very bricky if you draw into it when you don't want it. All right, now this card I'm going to talk about, which is very important, which is I'm running 3 Hidden Armory. Now, this is what I'm going to call like kind of the search or draw portion of the deck. Now, I've played different iterations of these 3 cards. So I have done Pot of Prosperity, and I've also done Pot of Extravagance at 3 in this spot. Well, let me explain what this does first, and then explain why I'm trying this over the pots, right? So if you're not familiar with this card, you send the top card of your deck to the graveyard, so you mill 1, and then you search your deck for any equip card, okay? The reason why I like this is Ha-Rei searches, but she only searches Mikanko equips. This can search any equip. So if I'm in a game-winning situation, I can search for Double-Edged Sword. Or if I need to, negate an opponent effect, I can search for Axe of Fools, right? Or I can just go into normal Mikanko equips, right? But you cannot normal summon the turn you play this card. But this card is not limited to once per turn. So, like, one thing that's a negative about Pot of Extravagance, Pot of Prosperity is they can be bricky because if you draw 2 or 3 of them, you can only play 1 per turn, and it can actually get to be a hindrance, right? Whereas this, if I draw 2 or 3 of these, I can drop all 3 of these in 1 turn, and milling is actually good in this deck because there are some very good things that happen with stuff in the graveyard. And then I'm searching for any equip card, and here's the thing. It doesn't just search the deck, it can also search the graveyard, so it can recycle. So if my 1 of Double-Edged Sword has been used or got discarded, I have a way to get this back out of the graveyard to use it again. So I really like Hidden Armory. So this card and Lava Golem are my 2 cards that say I can't normal summon, so if I'm playing those, I've built my deck with a lot of special summoning options to get around that, okay? Now let's go back to Pot of Prosperity. Pot of Prosperity, the big thing negative I have with Pot of Prosperity that I actually didn't even realize until an opponent called me on it. I didn't even realize it did this. But the damage that you do the turn you play it is halved. And this deck is a deck that you like to surprise your opponent and OTK them. And that heavily hinders your ability to do that. So I didn't like the way it took away my OTK possibilities, right? Then Pot of Extravagance. The thing I didn't like about Pot of Extravagance is that you have to do the random cards from your extra deck, and the extra deck can actually be kind of important for this deck, depending on what's happening. And so I didn't like that it was messing with my extra deck. And I just like the flexibility of Hidden Armory playing more than one. Now, over time, I might decide that I'm not liking how Hidden Armory is working. Then I'm probably going to go back to Pot of Extravagance. I like Extrav, I think, a little bit better than Prosperity. I think I'd rather just draw 2. Just flat out and get the extra card than to be able to like pick 1 out of 6, right? So I think Pot of Extrav or Hidden Armory is the play here, but I'm going Hidden Armory right now, and I played it this week at my locals, and I really liked the way it worked. It worked out really, really well, right? So that's the spell lineup. A lot of spells in this deck, right? Then we're going to go to the trap lineup. So for traps, we have 1 Mikanko Promise, 1 Mikanko Rivalry, and 2 Spirit Walk. Spirit Walk is the new one that I really, really like, right? But let's go through the cards. So Promise, it just lets you special summon a monster from your hand or deck, a Mikanko monster, and then you can equip it with an equip spell from your hand or graveyard that is an appropriate target. This is more of kind of like a grind state card, so that's why I only play it at 1. It's good kind of mid to late game when like graveyards are established. My opponent maybe is playing cards to deal with my field. This is just a nice surprise card where on my opponent's turn, typically I'm going to play this and summon a Huli and equip it with something, make it so they can't target. It's a really nice safety net for that, but at more than 1, this can brick really hard. Mikanko Rivalry, I used to play this at 2, but I needed to make room for Spirit Walk, so I took it down to 1. But Rivalry, I think, is very good at 2, but I'm playing it at 1 right now. The reason why it can be bricky is you have to control a Mikanko monster to play it, unfortunately. But provided you control a Mikanko monster, you can target any face-up monster on the field and equip it with an appropriate spell card, equip card from your deck, which is really, really nice, right? So what's good about this is, let's say I have a Mikanko, but I don't have an equip, so I could summon Huli, have this set, and then on my opponent's turn, I can equip it with something and then feel safe and get all the effects of it. But the way I really like to use this is to equip my opponent with stuff, right? So on my opponent's turn, as long as I control Mikanko, I can play Rivalry. The big thing I like to do is when my opponent tries activating an effect, I'll play Rivalry and then equip my opponent with Axe of Fools, which will negate that monster's effect, which is really good. The other thing you can do with this is you could play it on your opponent's turn, and you could equip them with Reflection Rondo and actually take control of the monster. So just another like interruption technique there, right? So that's kind of what Rivalry's for. And then Rivalry has a graveyard effect that when an equip card is sent to your graveyard, you can banish it and add an equip card from your graveyard to your hand. So another way to recycle your equip cards, very good there. Then we're running 2 Spirit Walk. This is the new one from Duelist Nexus. I do really like this card. It is a very, very good card. So what it does is you can target a face-up monster your opponent controls and actually equip it to a Mikanko monster you control. This is really nice. Once again, the opponent's monster has to be able to be targeted, but this gets around monsters that like can't be destroyed by battle or card effects, like monsters that can be kind of hard to get rid of. You just take it and equip it, which is really nice. So not only am I getting rid of an opponent's monster, but I might equip it to a Ha-Rei or a Huli, and then I can search my deck and add in actually plus a card off of it, right? Which is really, really good. And then the other thing you can do with this in the grave is you can banish it to special summon a Mikanko that is either, what is it, banished or in your hand. Let me double check here. This card is new, right? I haven't used it much yet. Yeah. So any Mikanko that's banished or in your hand, you can just special summon it with this by banishing it, which is nice, right? So what I talked about earlier is when you summon something with Mayawashi Dori from the graveyard, right? So if you use this to summon a Mikanko, when that Mikanko leaves the field, it gets banished. Well, when you have that banished Mikanko, Spirit Walk then can help you get that back. So that's really nice recycling there. But I like the interruption of actually taking your opponent's monster and equipping it to one of yours, which is very, very good. So that is the main 40 card deck, okay? Next, what we're going to do, I'll go through everything, side and extra deck, and then I'll talk about those, once again, those extra packages I wanted to talk about. So the extra deck is really important for Mikankos because once players understand, especially if you're playing this consistently at a local, what I'm finding at my locals, what happens is the players that know what I'm doing, I will always want to go second. So I'll go second. I have an opponent that I'll play. He literally won't even look at his hand. He'll draw a card, or he'll just say pass. He like won't look at his hand, nothing. He'll just go turn 1 pass and just let me go. Because he knows that without monsters on his field, I cannot damage him, right? So the extra deck is really important for that if you kind of need to push the issue and push some damage out, right? So for Link monsters, we're going to run Dynamondo, which this is just really good in any ritual-based deck. Basically, when you special summon it, you can target a card on the field and a ritual monster in your graveyard, shuffle both into the deck, and then during your opponent's turn, you can quick effect tribute it, target a ritual monster in your graveyard, and add it to your hand or special summon it. So Dynamondo is just a really good way to like recycle your Ohime if your Ohime is in the graveyard. So like you can link Ohime off with something to get into this, and then later on when Ohime is in the graveyard, you can get rid of this to bounce it back in your hand if you need to, right? So it's just a nice little tech piece there for ritual. So we've got Dynamondo. Then what we're running, let me do a couple more generic ones here. IP Masquerena and Access Code, just because they're generic options. Access Code is just kind of like a big beat stick that you can get out. It is a Link 4, but you can get you can get out enough monsters in this deck to be able to get him out. So if you can get Access Code out, it's just like a really big beefy boy you can beat down with, which is really nice. But you definitely don't have to run Access Code, and you probably don't have to run IP either. If there's other just generic links that can do things you like, feel free to run those. I think it's very optional. What this deck can do, though, that I really like is we can run a full Charmer package in here. Okay, so we're going to run every single elemental Charmer. Now, the reason why we can get away with this is that inherently within the deck inherently has fire, light, wind, and water, right? So we've got a bunch of elements covered there immediately. The reason why these are nice is you just always have a link option you can get into very quickly with just 2 monsters. Now, the reason why we run every element is because what you've noticed with this deck is we can take control of opponent's monsters. So what this means is if I use either my equip card or I use Nini's effect, well, Nini I wouldn't be able to do because I would have to be able to do it on my turn. But like if I take control, say, with the equip card, which is the main way that I would do this, no matter what element my opponent's monster is, I can link it off into a Charmer and then steal it back from the graveyard, right? So let me give you an example. Let's say I have like Ha-Ray on the field, who's a fire monster, right? So let's say I have Ha-Ray on the field, and my opponent has a Baron out, and the Baron's already used the negate, right? So I can use my equip card, take control of the Baron. Because the Baron is wind, I can link off Ha-Ray and Baron to go into the Wind Charmer. And then the Wind Charmer can use her effect to actually steal Baron from the graveyard, put it in the zone, and now I've got Baron with all of the effects refreshed. So that's what the Charmers do, because, you know, when you steal a monster with the equip card, remember the effects are negated. Well, having the Charmers essentially allow you to go into the Charmer, recycle that monster, and get the effects back. Or you could steal whatever from your opponent and then grab something better from the graveyard. So I think the Charmers are just a really, really nice option for doing that, right? Then I actually have like an Xyz package. Now, the Xyz is actually the way I like to roll into things. So we have, rank 3s are probably the easiest thing to make. So we have Leviair, we have Ashura King, and we have Wind Up Zenmaines. Now, Zenmaines is a card you probably haven't heard of in a hot minute, but he actually works pretty well. So let me talk about how these cards are used. So depending on the situation will depend on which rank 3 you want to go into. Leviair is going to be like if you have something banished from Mayawashi Dori and you want to get it back, that's when you use Leviair. Ashura King is actually just a really nice beat stick. So you have to get 3 level 3s out, but that's very doable in the deck. It's 2100 attack and can attack 3 times, so it can really beat down. So this is a really good way to push the issue if my opponent, if my opponent goes turn 1 pass with like no monsters, and I have a way to like special summon out 3 monsters and make this guy, he's going to hit for 6,300 because he's going to attack 3 times. Not to mention if I find a way to like get an equip on him, like if I get double-edged sword and he gets 2,000 attack, like that could be kind of crazy. So Ashura King is just a really nice way to force the issue and beat down damage. And then the reason why I like Zenmaines is a really safe option because if he would be destroyed, you can detach a material instead to save him from being destroyed. Then during the end phase, you can pop a card. So Zenmaines you can use in 2 ways. You can either set him out for just like a grind game and leave him out there and see how your opponent wants to deal with them. Or what we do with any of these rank 3s, but like if I do this combo, I usually like to do it with Zenmaines. But we can do Zenmaines and then main phase 2, like you attack with Zenmaines. Because the nice thing with Zenmaines is he can guarantee attack into anything and he's not going to die. So he'll survive. And then at main phase 2, you go into Downward Magician and then you can go into Zeus. So then Zenmaines is just a really safe way to get into Zeus, right? So that's why I run Zenmaines in there. You can also get into Zeus with like Leviair. You just have to make sure you can attack first because you have to attack to be able to go into Zeus, right? But then you've got Zeus out there and then you can do board wipes and all that kind of thing, right? Then the last Xyz I'm running, this one is a little bit like situational, but it's this Damper Vampire Sheridan, right? And he's a rank 6. And the way you get him out is you would have to have Ohime on the field because Ohime is a level 6. But if you have Ohime out and can steal an opponent's monster, this guy makes it so that when you Xyz for him, any opponent's monster can be treated as a level 6 that you've taken control of. So you could steal anything, combo with your Ohime and go into this guy. And then this guy can like special summon stuff from your opponent's graveyard. So he's just like a nice little tech option you can run. He hasn't really ever come up yet, but he's just in there as like a nice option. I would say the extra deck though is a very flexible place because the deck, other than like kind of trying to push the issue with damage, isn't really dependent on the extra deck, right? Which is why you can get away with Pot of Extravagance and Pot of Prosperity because you really don't use the extra deck a lot, but there is a lot of cool things you can do with it. So feel free, like on your own, if you want to change up the extra deck, try different things. If there's other combos that make sense to you a little bit better, definitely go with those. There's a lot of options you can do in the extra deck, right? Then we'll quickly go to side deck. Also, just keep in mind, side deck is always going to vary depending on your locals and what's going on. So I kind of built mine for like what's going on at my locals. So I've got Droll and Lockbird. I have 2 right now. I honestly just don't have a 3rd. I'd probably just run 3. I have Feather Duster because my opponent, if they run like Goes and Match or Rivalry, that can actually like really hurt my deck. If I'm running against like a trap deck or something, it's just you always want to have like, you know, Spell and Trap, Floodgate removal type cards. So Feather Duster is pretty good for that. Mikanko Kagura, this is the ritual card. So you might be thinking, what's the point of siding like a card that just ritual summons, right? Well, the thing is this card has an effect beyond just ritual summoning. So what this card does is when you ritual summon using this, you get to destroy cards your opponent controls up to the number of equipped spells with different names in your graveyard. And if you do, you do 1,000 damage to your opponent for each one. So let's say I just have like 2 equipped cards in the graveyard with different names. I can ritual summon into Ohime or something. I get to pop 2 of my opponent's cards, deal 2,000 damage. That's 2,000 damage less I would have to do to get an OTK. So I actually think of this ritual card as more of like a removal card because it pops cards, not just monsters. So this can also get rid of like spell and trap floodgates and things like that that really bug you. So that's why that's in there just as a side. Triple Tactics Talent. If you know you're playing it, I don't main deck it. You definitely could main deck this. I only side deck it because it's kind of burned me too much where like I play against opponents that aren't doing monster effects in my turn and then I can't use this. But I side it because if I know if I'm playing against the right opponent, this can be really good. And I do like to go turn 2. This is a really good turn 2 card, right? Then you run There Can Be Only One. This is really, really good in the deck. So this is the one that makes it so you can't control more than one monster of the same type. And since all of my monsters are different types, this doesn't really hurt me. I don't need multiples of the same monster on my field. This really can hurt certain decks, though. So There Can Be Only One is very good. Then I run 3 Summon Limit. I was playing against Flunderees this week, and this card just destroys Flunderees. It destroys a lot of decks. A lot of decks summon a ton. And Mikanko decks, summoning twice or less is actually a pretty common thing. Like, you do not combo off and summon a ton in this deck. So Summon Limit is definitely a card that doesn't hurt you and can really hurt your opponent depending on the deck that they're running. And then I run Imperial Iron Wall. I run Imperial Iron Wall as a side just because there are people at my locals that will play like Macrocosmos and things like that that banish. Flunderees, this really crushes because they like to banish a lot. I just want to be in a situation, and my deck really doesn't need to banish or want to banish, and I don't want my stuff getting banished. The other thing is if I have Imperial Iron Wall out, my Owashidori can't banish cards, so then I can just keep recycling monsters and resummoning them from my graveyard. So yeah, I side it just because I feel like there's enough people that do a lot of banishing at my locals that this is effective. Now, depending on where you're playing, that might not be as effective, but I do like Imperial Iron Wall here for those reasons. So that's basically it. That's the main, that's the side, that's the extra. Pretty much how to play the deck. Now let me talk about these other packages that you could potentially run, right? So a very common package you'll see is a Kaiju package. And a Kaiju package might look something like this, right? So like you might run, I've seen people run 4 to 5 Kaijus, and you do want to vary up the names a little bit, and you want to run really high attack ones because you want to be able to beat into them. And then you'd run like 2 or 3 interrupted Kaiju slumbers. Now, the reason why I veered away from Kaijus is the thing with Mikanko, especially a pure Mikanko, is the deck can be very bricky. You can get some really like death draws in this. Because the problem is if you draw all monsters but no equips, there isn't a lot you can do. And if you draw all equips with no monsters, you can get some really nasty hands where that happens, right? Luckily, the deck searches enough where like you can get around that, but you can just get some really nasty ones. What I found with Kaijus is it just made the deck less consistent. And I would get some really aggravating draws where I would draw 2 to 3 Kaijus like and a Slumber, and it's so bricky. And it's like not what I want my deck to do, right? Like my deck is about Mikankos. And you can draw like full hands, or there's enough like generic stuff where it's like I draw a couple of Kaijus, and then I draw like Axe of Fools, and then I draw like a Mikanko equip card that can only be equipped to Mikankos. Like, dude, you can just brick so hard. And so the reason why I strayed away from the Kaiju package, it's not that the Kaijus are bad, but it takes up a lot of card slots and it makes the deck more bricky. So that's why I opted to go away from that. And what I found was that the 3 Lava Golems was a nice compromise, because I'm getting what I want out of the Kaijus, but I'm condensing it into only 3 cards. Yes, it's less consistent, I'm going to draw into it, but it's also less consistent that I'm going to brick with too much of it, right? It's very rare that I draw 2 Lava Golems, right? But if you get a bunch of Kaijus, and then the other thing is Interrupted Kaiju Slumber, while it is a very good card, it is super easy for opponents to negate and get around. There's a lot of monsters that can't be destroyed, or they can do stuff to stop things from getting destroyed, or they'll just flat out have a negate. And what I'll find is like I'll play Slumber, they'll just negate it, and then I'm just kind of screwed for the turn. Like, because the time I want to play Slumber is when my opponent's got like a really big field. The problem is they're going to lay down fields with like 50 negates, and they're just going to negate it. So that's why I like Lava Golem, where I can just lay over 2 of those really oppressive monsters, right? So that's the Kaiju package, and that's why I've kind of strayed away from it. I do keep it, though, handy in case I want to go back to it. Now, the other package you'll see is a Diviner package. So you will see people run 2 to 3 Diviners, and then in your extra deck, you have whatever amount of Entis and Herald you want to run, right? And this is a pretty standard combo. You summon Diviner, pitch one of these, so you could pitch this and pop a card, pitch this and search for a ritual. Sounds really great, right? Because like you would summon this, becomes a level 6, you pitch this, get your Ohime. Sounds amazing, right? The problem I have with Herald, and maybe I just got burned on it way too many times that it made me hate it, was that Diviner, I would have hands where I would have Mikankos with equip cards, but then I would have Diviner in hand. And I would be in situations where I had no special summons available to me. And what I hate is using my normal on Diviner, and 9 times out of 10, my opponent just freaking ashes it, and I don't get it. And then I'm stuck out here with just a Herald, Mikanko's in my hand that I can't normal summon, and then I'm just kind of like a dead duck, right? Now, with my build, currently with more special summoning options, I can maybe get away with this more. But once again, this is another card that if they do negate it, like it really ruins you. And everybody and their mom plays Ash, right? Like it's like such a common card to see. So I think my frustration with Diviner was just I get ashed way too much with it and it just wrecks me. Whereas I could have just, so we can look at the situation, right? So I use my normal summon on Diviner, it gets negated. There's nothing else I can do. I'm kind of a dead duck. Whereas on that same turn, let's say I do Ha-Ray, I equip Ha-Ray with something. Well, they can Ash to negate my search, but I still have a Mikanko with an equip card that can't be destroyed by battle, and the opponent can't beat into it. To me, that's a better setup than just having a Herald out there with nothing to protect, right? So that's kind of why I strayed away from that. But if you do the Herald package, then it opens up Synchro Summoning, which I know some people like. So this Power Tool Braver Dragon is a really nice option you can run. This Infernal Knight Charles isn't the craziest, but there is a new Link monster that came out that this guy specifically goes into, and he's actually pretty solid. So you could run the Link Charles with this, and then have Power Tool Braver, and then you can even run, what is it? You can run Baron DeFleur if you want to then. So it does open up the Synchro plays. So once again, the Kaiju package, the Herald package, they're not bad packages. It's just for me personally, after experiencing them, I've kind of opted away from them. But I keep them handy because I might go back to them. So anyways, guys, there you go. That's the Mikanko deck. Let me know in the comments if you play Mikanko, if there's other things that you've tried, anything that you like. Let me know if there are adjustments you would make to my deck that you like better. If you've played the deck and you enjoy it, if you don't like the deck, things like that. I just want to hear from other Mikanko players. Like, what do you think of the deck? What is your experience with it? All that. Let me know what you guys think. Thanks for watching. We'll catch y'all on the next one.